Hello everyone, welcome to Shak Horror Stories. Before we dive into the tales of terror, please take a moment to subscribe to my channel and hit that like button. Also, let me know in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it right now? Your comments will significantly help my channel's growth, and I appreciate your support more than you know. Alright, let's dive into the stories. I live in the heart of Appalachia, and this is easily the most terrifying story of one of my experiences. This story may be short, or it may be drawn out. I am recounting these events as I type, as it was honestly one of the most horrifying things I have experienced, and it brings me genuine stress to think about. This happened maybe 2 to 3 years ago. I live in southern West Virginia, and have for my entire life. The woods and mountains surround every direction you look, and nighttime is a darkness that you can never dream of unless experienced. I was with a friend. I'll call him Mark. Mark was at my house one evening, doing the usual things, watching UFC, playing Xbox, etc. It was extremely late when we finally got bored and decided to go for a walk on a nearby trail to smoke a joint. This is not a particularly long trail, but it is very dense in the woods that surround it, and it is easy to get freaked out when thinking of your surroundings. We finally get to about halfway into the trail, about 30 minutes in, where we stop, pack our joint, and stand on the trail to chill and talk. The forest is very alive tonight. There are always noises in the woods, but the amount of animal activity for the time was unsettling. At this point it was probably past 1 a.m. This was strange and kind of eerie, but not alerting, as any sort of predatory animal in the area may cause a disturbance. We finish smoking and continue our walk when almost immediately the forest falls dead quiet. And as soon as the forest goes quiet, there is a voice. It almost sounds like a mocking, humanoid voice, shaky and uncertain, almost like an old children's toy, like the ones with the crackly speakers and robotic voice. If you know what I mean. This immediately sets us off. We bolt directly down the opposite length of the trail, but the sound does not gain distance. It doesn't get closer, per se, but no matter how far we ran down the trail, this eerie voice remains the same volume, going over and over with no quieting or stopping. At this point, I am convinced that we are in genuine danger, something I have felt very few times. Finally, after sprinting for who knows how long, we exit the trail. Grasping for breath and almost at the verge of tears of how frightening this was, we begin to exit the trail, and about 5 minutes from the exit, there's a bone-shaking, heart-stopping, murderous scream from directly behind us. I know what a mountain lion sounds like. This was not an animal. This was not someone playing or watching a movie. The scream sent birds flying from nests and made my heart drop into my stomach. It was the most genuinely depraved and violent scream that I have ever heard. This is a true story that I have only told to maybe 3 people, all of whom seem to brush it off as false. I've never been a person to push for the existence of the paranormal or spiritual, but I genuinely believe I encountered something inhuman in those woods. Edit. I know I will receive questions such as what the voice was possibly saying, or to explain the area and what happened after. I genuinely cannot remember what the voice was saying, if anything intelligible. I don't know if I could understand it then, and I certainly can't recall understanding it after several years of blocking it out of my memory. All that I recall is that it was a fluctuating voice in pitch, shaking, almost just joining sounds together. After running from the scream at the end of the trail, we ran to the car, which was only about 5 more minutes from the trail, so we got there relatively fast from sprinting. Oh wow, I feel this in my bones. My Uncle Mom's brother has had a farm in southeast WV since the 70s, long before I came into this world. Mom is the oldest of 5, and my uncle built a bunch of houses on the farm so family could use it whenever. Some lived there and other, like my family, visited often. My mom and older sister, and I would go for weeks on end to spend time with family. And I always loved it because I have a ton of cousins, and was the baby for a long time, so mostly I tagged along with my cousins and felt extremely safe, like it was my happy place. I don't really remember anything totally out of the ordinary when I was really little, other than I remember an imaginary friend whom I exclusively played with at the farm. Nowhere else, and we moved extensively for Dad's job, so I've lived in many different places. What I remember after age 5 was suddenly being old enough to not have to have someone walk me to and from other houses, which I thought was so cool, so I used to explore. My uncles liked to bow hunt and had taken me a few times not too far into the woods, so I was able to go back on my own and find their little tree platforms they had built to hunt from. I thought they were cool little tree houses. Your story sounds a lot like the very last time I ever took off by myself in the woods, without another family member with me. It was the winter. I wanted to be out in the snow and explore, so I found my way up the mountain, that is what I called it, but in fact, it was probably just a massive hill, and into the trees. I couldn't find the spot I was looking for and got pretty frustrated with my 8-year-old self. So I sat down by a creek to catch my breath and figure out where I was. I couldn't have been sitting more than about 3 minutes when something let out a scream I can only describe as blood-curdling. I thought it was a fox most likely, until I heard another voice crying, just weeping and wailing, and the sorrow was palpable. My cousins had always told scary stories about Appalachia, and I figured that they had followed me into the woods and were trying to scare the pants off me. For shots and giggles, I called out like, "Okay guys, not funny, okay, I'm going home, enough," and followed my footprints in the snow as fast as I could back to the farm. The screaming and crying didn't stop, stayed consistent as I moved, which really made me convinced it had to be my cousins. I don't think I heard words, just crying and screaming, but it wasn't pleasant. Made my way back to the main house, my uncle's house, which was the biggest on the property and visible from the edge of the woods, and absolutely booked it. Ran full tilt to get to the kitchen door. I remember getting through the door and slamming it behind me because I was a combo of terrified and annoyed that my cousins were playing a prank on me. The next closest cousin in age is 9 years older than me, and so I was often the butt of pranks. Well, wouldn't you know, every family member was accounted for in the living room, kitchen. The older male cousins and my uncles were in the kitchen putting their snow boots and coats on to come look for me. I had apparently been gone for several hours, and they were worried. According to my mom, I was white-faced. My hands were covered in scratches through my mittens. I guess I must have fallen or something. They were so worried I had disappeared. I should add, I set off from my aunt's to walk to my uncle's and had decided to take a detour and didn't tell anyone. Oops, I was 8 and really didn't think about how that might be bad. Mom said I looked like I had seen a ghost. I asked if anyone had come out to the woods to look for me. They said, "No, we've been looking at the different houses and we're just about to come look for you," because they saw my footprints head into the woods. I told them about where I went and what I heard, and my uncle, whose property it was, said, "Oh shit, I think you probably ran into the witch. I'm over here thinking, oh, some crazy lady lives in the woods and I probably stumbled near her cottage." Nope. The witch was just what they called the unknown entity that roamed the woods, screaming, crying, mimicking people's voices, and just giving people a good old sense of doom and dread. No one had a straight answer about possible folklore or anything like that, but all my older cousins had their own experiences with similar happenings over the years. Scared the living daylights out of me, and while I've been back to the farm over the years, I can tell you I have never once set foot near the woods tree line. Even as an adult, I was grateful my family didn't think I was crazy, but they said a general rule is not to be in the woods alone. So I listened. To my knowledge, nothing physical ever happened with anyone and this entity. More of a prankster than anything. But oof, the Appalachia has some wild stuff. I definitely remember some strange stuff happening during the week we had my aunt's funeral when I was 21. And random voices or red eyes or smoke apparitions on the wood's edge. But I never went to check them out after that one incident. Edit. I should add that 100% of the family that was at the farm that trip was accounted for at my uncle's house getting ready to come look for me. So if it was anything other than something supernatural, it was not from anyone staying at the farm.